Exploring the Palace of Versailles. Before starting this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. Let's start the video. The Versailles Palace. King Louis XIV constructed the Château de Versailles, a former royal home in Versailles, which is roughly 19 kilometers, 12 miles, west of Paris. The public establishment of the palace, museum, and national estate of Versailles has been in charge of managing the palace since 1995. It is owned by the French Republic and is overseen by the French Ministry of Culture. Versailles Palace, Park and Gardens receive about 15 million visitors annually, making it one of the most well-liked tourist destinations on the planet. On the grounds of the Palace of Versailles, Louis XIII constructed a straightforward hunting lodge in 1623. After his death, Louis XIV developed the chateau into the first stages of the palace, which underwent numerous renovations in phases between 1661 and 1715. It was a favorite retreat for both kings, and in 1682 Louis XIV made Versailles the de facto capital of France by relocating his court and government there. Kings Louis XV and Louis XIV kept things this way, mostly making interior changes to the palace. But in 1789 the royal family and the French capital moved back to Paris. For the rest of the French Revolution, the Palace of Versailles was largely abandoned and emptied of its contents, and the population of the surrounding city plummeted. Due to the palace's significance as the epicenter of French power, the arts and science in the 17th and 18th centuries, UNESCO named the palace and park a World Heritage Site in 1979. The palace, its gardens, and several of its ancillary buildings have all been added to the French Ministry of Culture's list of historically significant monuments. History. Louis XIII, King of France, constructed a hunting lodge on a hill in a popular hunting area in 1623, 16 kilometers, 10 miles from his main estate, the Château de Saint-Germain-en-Laye, and 19 kilometers, 12 miles, west of Paris. The location was a wooded swamp close to the town of Versailles that Louis XIII's court derided as being unfit for a king in general. One of his courtiers, François de Bassompierre, remarked that the lodge would not inspire vanity in even the simplest gentleman. The lodge was replaced with a chateau by architect Philibert Leroy between 1631 and 1634 for Louis XIII, who forbade his queen, Anne of Austria, from staying there overnight, even after smallpox outbreaks at Saint-Germain-en-Laye in 1641 forced Louis XIII and his 3-year-old heir, the future Louis XIV, to move to Versailles. Construction. Only 2 detached service wings and a forecourt were added to the chateau by Laval during the 1660s, as the work at Versailles was initially focused on its park and gardens. But Louis XIV made the decision to transform Versailles into a full-scale royal residence in 1668 to 1669 in response to the expansion of the gardens and France's victory over Spain in the War of Devolution. By the end of the decade, he had decided to incorporate his father's chateau rather than replace it. As a result, from 1668 to 1671, Louis XIII's chateau was surrounded on 3 sides by a design element known as the envelope. This resulted in a combination of styles and materials that horrified Louis XIV and that Colbert described as a patchwork, and gave the chateau a new, Italianate facade overlooking the gardens, while preserving the courtyard facade. Laval passed away in 1670, leaving the position of first architect to the king unfilled for the following 7 years, despite efforts to harmonize the 2 facades. Role in politics. Louis XIV's politics, the expression and concentration of French art and culture, and the concentration of regal power all revolved around the Palace of Versailles. In 1664, 1668, and 1674, Louis XIV held a series of midnight festivals on Versailles grounds, which were well publicized throughout Europe through print and engravings. Louis XIV attempted to establish Versailles as his seat of government as early as 1669, but particularly from 1678. To that end, he extended the palace to accommodate the court. However, the official relocation of the court to Versailles did not occur until 1682, because the French nobility's views on the city were divided. Louis XIV was successful in luring the nobles to Versailles to chase prestige and royal patronage under a rigid court etiquette, thus undermining their old provincial power bases. By 1687, however, it was clear to everybody that Versailles was the de facto capital of France. Louis XIV received the Doge of Genoa, an embassy from the Ayutthaya Kingdom, and an embassy from Safavid Iran at the Palace of Versailles in 1685, 1686, and 1715, respectively. Hall of Mirrors. The westernmost section of the palace is a lengthy gallery called the Hall of Mirrors that overlooks the gardens. On the site of a terrace la Val, erected between the king and queen's rooms, the hall was constructed between 1678 and 1681. A modified version of the Corinthian order is used to embellish the marble-walled hall, which has 578 mirrors facing 17 windows to reflect the light that comes in through them. The ceiling fresco, which Le Brun completed over the following 4 years, depicts 30 incidents from Louis XIV's first 18 years of rule, 17 of which are military triumphs over the Dutch. The fresco depicts Louis XIV himself alongside classical figures in the scenes celebrating moments in his reign, such as the beginning of personal rule in 1661, breaking from earlier frescoes at Versailles that used allegories derived from classical and mythological scenes. The northern and southern ends of the Hall of Mirrors are respectively framed by the Salon of War and the Salon of Peace, a stucco bas-relief showing Louis XIV riding over his adversaries may be seen in the Salon of War, which was built and adorned from 1678 to 1686. It honors French triumphs in the Franco-Dutch War with marble panels, gilded bronze trophies of arms, and other military-themed decorations. In keeping with its name, the Salon of Peace is also decorated similarly. Royal Chapel. The southernmost point of the north wing is where the Royal Chapel of Versailles is situated. The structure has a height of 40 meters, 130 feet, a length of 42 meters, 138 feet, and a width of 24 meters, 79 feet. The chapel's rectangular shape and semicircular apse combine Versailles' French Baroque design with traditional Gothic Royal French church architecture. The chapel's ceiling is made up of an uninterrupted vault that is separated into 3 sections by frescoes by Antoine Coypel, Charles Delafosse, and Jean Jouvenet. The motifs beneath the frescoes honor Louis X's achievements and feature portraits of David, Constantine, Charlemagne, and Louis X, as well as the fleur-de-lis and Louis XIV's monogram. The organ of the chapel was built by Robert Clicquot and Julien Tribuot in 1709 to 1710. Museum of the History of France. Soon after assuming the throne in 1830, Louis Philippe I made the decision to convert the palace into a museum honoring all the glories of France, complete with artwork and sculptures honoring celebrated French triumphs and heroes. The majority of the palace's apartments were completely destroyed in the main building. All but the king and queen's apartments were destroyed, and they were replaced with a collection of sizable rooms and galleries, including the Coronation Room, whose original volume Louis Philippe left unaltered, the state apartments, the state drawing the Hall of Battles, which commemorates French conquests with large-scale paintings, the 1830 Chamber, which commemorated Louis Philippe's own ascension to power in the French Revolution of 1830, and the famous Jacques-Louis David picture of Napoleon, I's coronation, are all on show there. Paintings by Philippe de Champagne, Pierre Mignard, Laurent de la Hire, Charles Le Brun, Adam Franz van der Meulen, Nicolas de Largillière, Hyacinthe Rigaud, and Jean-Antoine Houghton that represent historical events in France were among those taken from the Louvre. Antoine Jean Gros, Jacques-Louis David, Hubert Robert, Elisabeth Vigée Lebrun, Jean-Marc Nadier, and Thomas Lawrence. Famous early 19th century artists, such as Eugène Delacroix, who depicted St. Louis during the French triumph over the British at the Battle of Taillebourg in 1242, commissioned other works specifically for the museum. Horace Vernet and François Girard are 2 additional painters who are included. Louis Philippe and his sons are depicted in a large Vernet artwork, posing in front of the palace gates. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel before you go.